Hello, Grand Park community. It's Courtney from your Yoga a la Retreat, here to offer you some gentle movement, some strength, some flexibility. I'm so grateful that we can continue to practice yoga together as a community. I'd love to know how you all are. I miss you very much. You're welcome to put something in the comments and just say hi. Today in our yoga practice, I'd like to kick things off with a poem. This is a Wendell Berry poem. He's a poet and farmer, I think, in Kentucky. And I'll explain why I'm using this poem in class today in a moment, but I offer that you use this as a little listening meditation. So if it's helpful for you to close your eyes while you listen, to take in the words, wherever you are, find yourself in a comfortable seat and listen to the wisdom of Wendell Berry. This poem is called How to Be a Poet. Make a place to sit down. Sit down. Be quiet. You must depend on affection, reading, knowledge, skill, more of each than you have, inspiration, work, growing older, patience for patience joins time to eternity. Any readers who like your poems doubt their judgment. Breathe with unconditional breath the unconditioned air. Shun electric wire. Communicate slowly. Live a three-dimensional life. Stay away from screens. Stay away from anything that obscures the place it is in. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. Accept what comes from silence. Make the best you can of it. Of the little words that come out of the silence, like prayers prayed back to the one who prays, make a poem that does not disturb the silence from which it came. So I invite us today in our practice. I'd like to focus on this one little stanza where he says, there are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places. So a lot of times in our lives, I'm speaking from the I, because I know this is true for me. I think it's true for a lot of us. We can get busy, we can get bored, we can get stressed, we can get overwhelmed and not really see what's in front of us. And the practice of yoga is a practice of presence. And the practice of yoga always helps me to connect to the moment that I'm in, to connect to the breath I'm in, to connect to the body that I'm in. And each posture of yoga is a really beautiful new opportunity to practice that, to make a sacred space. Asana, which is the physical practice, translates as seat. So we come into each shape and we take a seat and we allow breath to flow. So in practice today, I'm going to remind us to find sacredness. And I don't mean this in a religious way, although if you're a religious person, you could take that to mean what it means to you. But I mean this from a spiritual sense. So let's find that by the way that we're choosing to sit. So notice if you just kind of plunked down, maybe you're not really engaged with your body. Can you sit up from the floor or from your chair and find a sacred space? So maybe a long spine, maybe the shoulders melt away from your ears, maybe the jaw softens. And see if you can start to take in some sacred breath. So by noticing the breath, can you start to let it fill the shape of your body to connect you with presence, maybe to connect you with a feeling of ease, peace, joy. Or maybe if you're not feeling so good today, maybe it connects you with whatever feeling that you're in. And let whatever feeling you're in be a sacred special place to be? Can you find an even breath? So can you make those exhales match the length of your inhales? And then from your sacred seat, can you draw your hands in a gesture of prayer at your heart? Bow your chin into your chest. And just offering up our intention to make each pose, each breath sacred, or at least the ones that we remember to. And I'll be here as our guide to remind us. So from here, lift your head. I'm going to scoot back a little bit just so you can see my body a little bit more and what I'm doing. So I like to sit up on something for this next series. If you have a blanket or a towel, you're welcome to take that. Let's take a cross of the ankles if you're not already. Find a nice tall heart, shoulders melt away from your ears. And then keeping your left hand down, reach your right arm up and over. Ground down into your sit bone, shoulders melt away from your ears. Can you fill this side body with your breath? And then inhale back to center. Let's switch it to the other side. So right hand comes down, left arm reaches up and over. You can have as much bend in your elbow as you need, grounding your sit bones down. Steady your gaze on one point. Breathing some long sacred breaths into your left side body. And then we're just going to move side to side. So letting this be a little stretchy dance. So we're going to inhale, rise your arms up to the sky. And then exhale, left hand down, right arm comes over. Inhale to center. Exhale, right hand down, left hand comes over. Inhale back to center. Left hand down, right arm comes up and over. Inhale back to center. And then right hand comes up and over. Sorry, right hand comes down, left arm comes up and over. Find your way back to center. And then we'll walk the hands out. So we're going to start to get gently into the hips here. So walk your hands forward. Doesn't have to be the biggest forward fold. Keep your shoulders away from your ears. How's your breath? How can you find yourself present in this shape? So can you just commit to arriving into each shape, each seat? Taking a couple deep breaths and letting that be a sacred moment for yourself. Go ahead and walk yourself back up. Switch the cross of your legs. Whatever's ankle was on top, let it be on the bottom. Find your tall spine. And then walk your hands forward to any degree. Keep your shoulders away from your ears. Maybe slight bend of your chin to your chest to release the back of your neck. And then use your breath to get present into this shape. To make this shape sacred, special, just like the poem said. And then walk yourself up. And then we'll find our way to hands and knees. So I like to put a blanket underneath my knees sometimes. Today I think that will be a good day. You don't have to if that's not right for you. You could also put a towel or something underneath your knees. Wrists are stacked underneath your shoulders. Maybe tuck the toes today if you want to add a little foot stretch, or tops of the feet are down to the earth. Spread your fingers nice and wide. Press down into your knuckles. So we're lifting up out of the shoulders. We're not scrunching the shoulders towards the ears. We're pressing down. Pull your belly into your spine. And then from here, let's find a few cat-cows. So let this be sacred movement. So inhale, the belly drops. The heart rises through the arms. Exhale, press into your knuckles, round in your upper back. Inhale, the belly drops, the heart rises. Exhale, curl everything up and in. Inhale, belly drops, heart rises. Exhale, everything comes up and in. Find a neutral spine and then just start to draw some circles with your hips. So it's sort of like cat-cow, but we're getting a little bit into the side body. So almost like you had a pencil on your tailbone. And if you can't see what I'm doing, just move intuitively. So just kind of feel into your body right now. Feel into your spine. And then we'll switch the circling of the tailbone the opposite direction. Doesn't even have to be what you did on the other side. Maybe you want to use your shoulders a little bit more. Really nice. And then from here, if your toes are tucked, go ahead and untuck your toes. Keep your knees exactly where they are underneath the hips. Walk your hands forward. We're coming into puppy dog pose. So tapping the forehead down to the mat or the top of the head, arms are active here. So we have our downward facing dog arms. So the fingers are spread wide, the armpits are hugging in, the shoulders are rolling away from the ears. Let's take some breaths into our upper back here. So we'll take 3 big breaths. Exhale the breath out. Inhale the breath. Exhale the breath for 1. Inhale the breath. Exhale the breath for 2. Inhale the breath. Exhale the breath for 3. Take your hands underneath your shoulders again. Press yourself up, hands and knees. And then take your hands 1 palm forward. Tuck your toes. Let's send the hips up and back for downward facing dog. So with as much bend in your knees as you need. The arms are active here just like they were in puppy dog. You can pedal the feet out if that feels good. So exploring the backs of the legs. So maybe bending one knee, flattening opposite foot, and then switching to flatten the opposite foot, bend opposite knee. If your neck and shoulders are tight, you might want to shake your head yes and no a few times. And then let's all walk our hands back towards the feet, finding yourself in a forward fold with as much bend in your knees as you need again. So either grabbing opposite elbow, maybe the fingertips dangle or touch the earth. The goal isn't to force anything. The goal is to offer our breath and our presence to each pose. So really allow yourself to engage and be in your expression of this pose today. And then pressing down into your feet, start to roll yourself up nice and slow, stacking your spine on itself. And then finding your way to a stand. Let's tap the fingertips towards the shoulders so we have our little chicken wings. Inhale, the elbows come together, and then they go out and down on our exhale. Inhale slowly together and out. And then exhale down and around. So take a few more shoulder rolls. Let's switch the direction. So elbows come out on our inhale, up, and then exhale them down. Inhale out and up. Exhale them down. Inhale out and up. Exhale them down. Let's send our next inhale. Lift your arms tall to the sky. Let's pick a few apples here. So keep your feet glued to the earth. And then inhale, reach up through the right side body. If you don't like apples, maybe you pick a peach or a lemon. And then inhale back to center. exhale, pick another apple with your left hand. Find your way back to center. A few more little picks. Getting into your side body, keeping those feet grounded to the earth. And then from here, let's draw our hands to our hearts. So remembering, we're going to find a little sacred space in each pose. Feet and heels come together. Let's sink down into our chair pose. So our yogi chair looks like a little lightning bolt, maybe a little Z. Pull your belly back into your spine. Shoulders melt away from your ears. And even here, can you find a sacred space? So maybe you soften something. Maybe you find your strength or your power. Maybe you soften your jaw. On your next exhale, forward fold. Extend your legs. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back. Hands come down to the earth. Let's find our way into our first plank pose. So I say it a lot, but always remember you can place your knees down for plank. If knees up for plank restrains your breath or it isn't the right pose for you. So press into your knuckles, lift up out of your shoulders. Heels are reaching towards the back if the knees are up. If the knees are down, keep pressing into your knuckles. Find that lift. And then on everyone's next exhale, hips to sky, downward facing dog, or you can find your way to a child's pose. So child's pose would be knees as wide as your mat or as wide, a little wider than your hips, and then you sink your heels or your hips towards your heels. Wherever you are, find your sacred space, find your breath. If you're in your child's pose and you're ready to move along, find your way to down dog. If you're resting, you can stay resting. And let's all look in between our hands. If we're moving along, step your feet towards your hands. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back, heart reaches forward. Exhale, send your heart towards your thighs with as much bend in your knees as you need. Inhale, sink your hips, chair pose. We're going to find a little movement here now. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, heart lifts. Exhale, hands come down, step it back, plank to our downward facing dog. Step your feet on your inhale. Carry it up, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. We're going to do that one more time. One breath, one movement. Inhale, sink your hips, chair pose. Exhale, fold your heart, extend your legs. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back. Exhale, hands come down, plank pose, downward facing dog. Step your feet to your hands. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back. Exhale, fold your heart. Inhale, sink your hips. We're going to pause here again. So seated in our chair pose. Shoulders melt down away from your ears. Heart is lifting. Can you find the sacredness, the presence of this pose through the way that you're breathing? And then exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back. Exhale, hands come down, find your way, plank to downward facing dog. We're going to add to this. Inhale, step your right foot where your right hand is, back foot spins flat. Find your way up, warrior one. So we'll pause here, send your right hip back. Your back foot's on a 45-degree angle. We're pressing into the outer edge of the back foot. We're lifting up, heart is reaching tall to the sky, shoulders melting away from your ears. Can you embrace the sacredness of this pose? So find the presence in it, find the breath in it. One more big inhale wherever you are. And then exhale, we'll take the hands down to the earth, find your way plank to your downward facing dog. Next inhale, step your left foot, back foot spins flat. Press down into your feet, rise yourself up. Warrior one on the left. Left hip is reaching back, outer edge of your back foot's at a 45. We're pressing into that outer edge of the foot. Arms are up, or you can have your hands at your hips, belly scooping back towards the spine. Lift your heart, shoulders melt down. Find your breath, find presence in this pose. So can you just be here, not anticipating when it's going to be over, being in the experience of whatever's happening. Take one more breath here. On your exhale, hands top down, plank to our downward facing dog. You could also take your child's pose here. We're in our rest for 5 breaths. We're going to flow through all that 2 more times. See if you can find the little dance between breath and movement. And let that be a little sacred experience. So we're connecting breath, movement, body, spirit, mind, all together. What a beautiful thing to do. So if you're coming with us for these 2 rounds, look towards your hands, step your feet. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back. Exhale to fold. Inhale, sink your hips. 1 breath, 1 movement, chair pose. Exhale to fold. Inhale, heart reaches forward. Exhale, hands come down, plank to your downward facing dog. Inhale, right foot steps for right hand, find your way up, warrior one. Exhale, carries you down, plank to your downward facing dog. Inhale, the left foot steps, back foot spins flat. Carry the inhale up. Exhale, hands come down, plank to your downward facing dog. 5 breaths. Gather yourself, collect your energy, collect your focus. So you have the option to rest. So if child's pose is going to be a really good sacred place for you right now, please take that. If you'll find more presence by finding the movements and breath together, here we go. Look in between your hands, step your feet. Inhale, halfway lift, flat back. Exhale, fold yourself in half. Inhale, sink your hips, chair pose. Exhale, self folds in half. Inhale, heart reaches forward. Exhale, hands come down, find your way, plank to your downward facing dog. Inhale, step your right foot, find your way up, warrior one. Exhale, hands come down to the mat, plank to your downward facing dog. Inhale, left foot steps forward, back foot spins flat, warrior one. Exhale, hands come down to earth, plank to your downward facing dog. Let's all find child's pose. So knees come wide, big toes come together to touch. Sink your hips towards your heels. If they don't quite reach, you could put a blanket or a pillow underneath your seat. And then option to take your forehead to the mat, or you could stick or stack your fists on top of each other. So we want the forehead to rest down on something. See if you can collect your breath here. Settle down, settle in. Check in with yourself after some steady movements. How are you doing? How does it feel to be in your practice today? Maybe starting to slow down the breath again if after that movement the breath became a little more active. And then from here, let's take our arms up and overhead unless they're already there. We'll take the hands about a foot to the right and then think about sinking down towards your left heel. So we're getting back into the left side of the body. How's your breath here? your next inhale, walk yourself to center and then walk over about a foot to the left and then sink towards your right heel. So getting into the right side body. Breathing all up and down the right side from your hip all the way up to your fingertips. And then inhale yourself back to center. Let's pass through our downward facing dog. And then we'll walk our hands back to the feet. So you're going to bend your knees probably a lot here. We're going to take our peace fingers and our thumbs. We're going to place the index finger and middle finger under the toes. The thumbs come on tops of the toes. That might mean your knees are super bent. Elbows are out to the side. Neck and head is soft. And then from here, slowly start to extend your legs to whatever degree. So the goal is not to have straight legs unless that's your shape in your body. You could have the knees nice and bent. Notice if your shoulders are scrunching by your ears, send your shoulders away from the ears. Let your head be soft. If you don't know if you're gripping in your head, shake it a few times. Make sure you're pressing into all parts of your feet, not just your heels or the balls of the feet. And allow yourself to arrive into this fold. Allow yourself to find the presence of the pose through the breath, through the choice to be in this shape right now. It's a practice of presence. And we'll release our toe lock. Take your hands to your hips. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, stand all the way up. Really nice. We'll find our way to some balance. So grounding down into the left foot. We'll hug the right knee to hip level, interlacing below the right knee. Now, if this is not happening today, you could come to a wall for balance. You could also just take the toe down to the earth and still focus on strengthening that standing leg. So this is going to be our balance today. It looks really simple, but it's maybe not the simplest thing to do. So finding your tall spine, pressing down into your standing foot, steadying your gaze on one point. Option to stay here wherever you are. If balance is really wobbly today, please place your toes down onto the earth, right? If you want to play with a little bit more balance, take your hands to your hips and stand tall in your spine here. Keep pressing down into your left foot. Make this pose sacred in some way, even if it feels goofy, or maybe it doesn't feel like the strongest pose. Can you own and embrace wherever you are? And then we'll exhale the right foot down. Really nice, you guys. So shake out your feet. We have another side. So we'll ground down into our right standing foot. Find the stability of that leg and foot, and then hug your left knee towards about hip height. And just see how it goes. Again, all the same things. If that's not happening, you tap your left toes to the earth and you take your hands to your hips, or you take your left hand to a wall. Or you find the interlace underneath your left knee. You press down into your right foot, find a tall spine. How's your breath? How can you make this pose nice and sacred? And then deciding where you take it from here. So if you're clenching your jaw, if the breath has stopped, maybe you take the foot down and just tap the toes down or come to a wall. If you want to play with a little more balance, maybe you take your hands to your hip, find your tall spine. That thigh is getting a lot of work, right? One more breath. And then if the left foot is still up, tap it down to the earth. Let's take our feet a little bit wider than the hips. Toes are going to point out. We're going to come into our yogi squat. So the toes are slightly out. And then we squat down. You could always, if this is a really uncomfortable position for you, you could always find a pillow or a blanket and plop it down underneath your seat. Or if the ankles or the heels are coming way up, you could always put the blanket underneath your heels to bring the earth to you. So let's use things in our house or apartment to make things more easeful. So wherever you are, press your prayer together, rise your heart from your prayer. Settle the hips down, settle the breath in. Make this a sacred pose, so almost like you were like a little statue in a garden. If you were frozen in marble for the rest of time, how would you want that to look? So I'm not talking about like achieving some like really fancy posture, but how do you want your face to look? How do you want your shoulders to represent the way that you feel? Do you want your heart to be hidden, or do you want to rise your heart towards the sun? Find a couple more big, beautiful breaths wherever you are. And then let's all come to sit our bums down on the earth. Soles of the feet come together, and take your feet as close into the body as feels okay. And then we have all kinds of options. I'm going to talk about all the options here. So if the hips are really tight here, you could always put something underneath your knees. So you could put a pillow underneath each knee. If this is feeling pretty good, but this is kind of your level, you could always prop your hands behind you and rise your heart tall. Or if you don't feel a lot going on in your inner thighs, you can start to walk your hands forward. Wherever you are, keep your spine tall. So if you're seated up, send your shoulders away from your ears, rise your heart. If you're forward folding, instead of hunching your back, see if you can send your heart towards the front of your mat and walk your hands out. Shoulders are away from your ears. And then we'll settle into the breath. Find your sacredness, find your ease, find your presence. Take a couple more big, purposeful breaths. Allow those breaths to connect you to your shape. And then inhale, lift yourself up. We're going to do a new pose today. I suppose I've been doing a lot as I'm sitting around and reading and stuff. So you're going to keep your right leg as it is. We're going to send the left knee back so that it's in line with the hip. So the left knee. So the right leg is parallel to the top of your mat. The left knee is pointing out from the hip. So you're in like a little, like a little Z or an S pose. And then you'll take your hands behind your hips and puff up your chest. So this gets into the left thigh, maybe the hip flexor a little bit. It tends to be a little bit more gentle of a stretch than like a full pigeon pose or a thigh stretch, but it's kind of like a nice heart opener and a nice hip opener. So find a couple breaths here. I'm not sure why it's called deer pose. I've never seen a deer do this, but maybe you find yourself feeling like a deer here. And then find your way back up to take your hands forward. We'll switch it to the other side. So now the left leg comes parallel-ish to the top of the mat, and then the right knee bends back so it's in line with the right hip. The hands come behind your hips, and then you send your heart tall to the sky. So So now we're stretching and opening in the left quad, the hip flexors. Send your shoulders away from your ears. Maybe you look up to the sky. Find your breath. Find the presence available in this pose. Feel into yourself. And then on your next inhale, release forward. And then we'll take both legs and extend them out. So if the hamstrings are really tight, you could grab your blanket again and you could come to sit up on your blanket just to give your hamstrings a little bit more space. So I don't know if you can see that. I'll face this way. So this creates a little more space for my hamstrings, or you're sitting down on the earth. And then from here, remember, you can put as much bend in your knees as you need. Rise your arms tall to find length in your spine. And then start to fold your heart towards your toes, keeping your spine nice and long. Hands come to frame around the legs, out to the sides. If you're super mobile, super flexible, you could grab your feet. Listen to the backs of the legs for information. And then see if you can fill this shape with your presence of breath. Take a few more full breaths into the backs of your legs. And then on your inhale, lift your heart, bend your knees, place your feet where your knees just were. Take your arms out to the side. And then we're going to do a slow roll down using belly strength. So pull your belly into your spine, nice slow roll down to the back. And then when you get there, knees stack up and over your hips. And let's take our little knee circles. So knees roll one direction. You can make big circles, little circles. And then take your knees in the opposite direction. Circling, letting this be a release for the low back. From here, keep your right knee in, extend your left leg long and let your heel tap down onto the mat. So this is a little more stretch for the hip flexors again. So there's an interlace below the right knee, shoulders are away from your ears. And then to the degree that feels right in your body, there's a gentle hug or a pull of the right knee towards the right shoulder. The left leg is active on the mat. And then we'll switch it to the other side. So next, inhale, hug your left knee in, extend your right leg out. And then listen to yourself here. So find that little gentle hug. It might be a really subtle hug. It might be a big hug of your left knee towards your left shoulder. Right leg is active, extended out long on your mat. And then hug both knees in. And just take your head side to side a few times. So like you're rolling your, like almost like you were saying no. Just let your neck roll side to side. Top of the head rolls along the mat. And then take your head to center. Let's find our happy baby. So grabbing the outsides of the feet, maybe, as long as the hips stay on the earth. If the hips start to pop up off the mat, grab something else. So maybe the backs of your thighs. We want this to be a little hip opener and a low back release pose. So allowing the low back to touch earth. Send your shoulders away from your ears wherever you are. On your exhale, release yourself out like a big X. So the arms are going to come up and overhead. The legs are going to come wider than the mat. If that doesn't feel quite right for your legs, you could stack your feet underneath your knees so that the low back has a little bit more connection to earth. And I'm just going to talk us through some breaths. So finding space across your heart, letting the body take up space here. Can you see about letting the breath fill every little crevice of you? So maybe notice if the breath is shallow, and maybe it's just a slight deepening or a slight deepening of awareness. And then from here, let your breath fall out of the body. Through your nose, inhale to your belly and pause. Same inhale, more breath to your heart and pause. Same inhale, more breath to the very top of your head and pause. From your mouth, long exhale out. We're going to do that one more time. Inhale, breath to your belly and pause. Same inhale, breathe into your heart space and pause. Keep inhaling to the very top of your head and pause. From your mouth, exhale everything out. And then finding yourself into Shavasana, so that means that the legs come in a little bit, extend out from the hips, the arms come down near the hips. Or if there's a more comfortable position on your back you'd like to take, I welcome you to take that now. And in Shavasana today, Shavasana translates as corpse pose. It's the pose we always finish practice with, and it's a pose where we receive the benefits of our practice, where we witness maybe a little bit more ease, a little bit more openness, maybe a little bit more sacredness. So see if you can be a good witness to your body for the next minute. So starting to call in a little bit deeper of a breath. Starting to find some gentle movements in the body, maybe some little sways. And then no rush, but whenever you're ready, rolling over to your right side, making a little pillow for your head with your inner arm. And then from the stability of the earth, press yourself up to a comfortable seat, joining your hands in a gesture of prayer at your heart. Bow your chin into your chest. So if this was an interesting practice today, I encourage us all to take it into our lives. So as we're moving through task to task, even especially when we're doing things that might feel mundane, or things we don't necessarily even want to be doing, maybe finding a sense of sacredness in it. So when you're washing the dishes, when you're sending an email, the more moments in our life where we can be present and engaged, in my experience, makes for a more meaningful and full life. So thank you all so very much for making time for yourself, for joining us at Grand Park to do a little good for ourselves. The light in me acknowledges the light in all of you. Namaste. Thank you, yogis. Stay well, please. I miss you. Namaste.